there, welcome to the Playing in the Sandbox podcast, where we are deeply committed to inspiring action in today's leaders. I want you to get ready and kick off your shoes and do your thing, right? Step into the sandbox, dig your toes in. Maybe you've got a comfy beach chair and you're going to sit down in the chair, right? I want you to get comfy today because we're going to disrupt some thinking around patterns of behavior that are no longer serving you. And we're going to implement a pattern interrupt for you. I am excited for you to join me today. And you're going to want to head over to tammyjbond.com/podcast, click on this episode on pattern interrupt, and download your copy of today's action plan. Not only are there notes from the episode, there is an actual tool for you to use to start that implementation or disruption process of interrupting those patterns of behavior that might be holding you back. I will see you in the sandbox. Let's get to it. Hey there, welcome into the sandbox as we dive into what is probably one of the most curious topics that I get an opportunity to talk with people about, and that's pattern interrupt. Interrupting those behavior patterns that no longer serve us. Interrupting those behavior patterns that get in our way. We don't even realize it because it's just something we've always done it this way, right? It's because we've always done it this way in the workplace. You know those types of people. You probably have them on your team. Or it's the patterns of behavior in decision making where, as we talked about in a previous episode on the cost of inconsistency in our decision making, there's a pattern of behavior that got us to that. And today we're digging our toes in and we're getting into that topic around interrupting those patterns of behavior, that cognitive behavioral strategy that no longer serves us in the workplace. Come on, I'm excited about this. So I know you've got your action plan because you went out and got it from tammyjbond.com/podcast and you clicked on this episode. And I know you've got your pen and paper ready. And I know that you know the drill. I want you to write down number 1, number 2, and number 3, because I know that you're going to take away 3 things and you're going to capture them in your notes today. And you're going to take away 3 things that you're going to implement, apply, or consider for a future shift in perspective for yourself as we're diving into pattern interrupt. So what is a pattern interrupt and what's the need for it? Why? I hear people ask me a lot. They're like, Tam, so you talk about this pattern interrupt. What is that? Well, it's a lot of things. Depends on you as an individual, but it is a cognitive and behavioral strategy that involves intentionally disrupting old patterns of behavior and thought, right? Behavior and thought that might be holding you back as a leader, as an individual, or holding you back from reaching your full potential. And it's based completely and totally on the idea that our actions and thoughts are often automatic and ingrained, right? We know that our actions and our thoughts are a part of that historical programming that we have, and they're formed through repeated behaviors, right? And experiences. And those patterns, whether they're positive or negative, can become deeply embedded in our subconscious mind. And they influence us. They influence our actions without conscious awareness, right? So those are the behaviors that oftentimes when I go in and I'm talking with leaders about disrupting their thinking and disrupting their tactics, right? They'll say, but I've always done it this way. It got me this far. Why can't I use it now? Or they're completely unconscious, completely unaware of patterns of behavior that are limiting and holding them back, patterns of negative self-talk that could be getting in their way, patterns of just destructive, consistent behavior patterns that while they worked for a while, they no longer work now, but they're so ingrained in us, we don't know how to change them. So leader, today, it's your turn, your time, your chance to really look at how implementing a pattern interrupt, right? As we introduce this deliberate interruption or a disruption in our established patterns, how it can serve you best. And this interruption serves as a catalyst when we invite it in for change, and it provides an opportunity to break free from limiting beliefs, right? From behaviors and thought processes that hold us back and that quite honestly could be destructive. And interrupting our patterns allows us to step outside of our comfort zones, stretch, right? Push those elbows out and stretch, right? And challenge the status quo while we're exploring new perspectives and possibilities for what's our future look like. So a pattern interrupt can take on various forms, right? It absolutely can. There's great research out there, and I invite you to get in and dig into it, get into the after action plan. There's information on there more about how patterns, a pattern interrupt can take on various forms, such as engaging in mindfulness practices, meditation to become more aware of our thoughts and behaviors, and consciously reframing the negative self-talk into positive, right? How do you do that? Yes, there's an affirmation process. There's also, in a pattern interrupt, there's an intentionality of a moment where you may say to yourself, stop that. You're better than that. Stop that. It's just like you to, or just like me to, right? That adopting new habits and routines, seeking support and feedback from others, right? That might have an awareness. You get to that confidant you get to share with, to say, I've got these patterns of behavior I've noticed as a leader, and it's not serving me well. And it's actually getting in the way of me leading my team effectively and efficiently. I'm going to actively seek out different experiences and perspectives just for the sake of being able to shift where I'm currently struggling, right? Where I might have a gap, my performance, the behaviors, the goal of the outcome, right? There's a gap in there. And how did I get there? What patterns of behavior might have gotten me there? Do those serve me still or not? And what do I want to change about that? So let me talk to a little bit about what the goal of a pattern interrupt is. It's really about creating a shift in our thinking, our emotional responses, right? Our actions, enabling us to overcome some of those self-imposed limitations and embrace new opportunities for growth and success. And as leaders, when we do that, it empowers us to break free from the constraints of old patterns and open ourselves up to the new positive directions in our personal and professional lives. And it's so important for you to be able to see that as a leader, because those could be, some of those patterns could be the very patterns that are limiting your team from trusting you. They could be a pattern of behavior that's limiting your team from fully engaging with you or having open dialogue to create new ideas or bring innovation into the conversation, because your patterns of behavior shut them down or make them feel not needed or unwelcome, right? Patterns play a significant role in our lives as they shape our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, and ultimately our outcomes. And that means the outcomes for our team as well. So if your team is not producing at the level that you need, want, and are asking them to produce at, first look at yourself and say, what patterns might I have in place or have I imposed that could be limiting, like that could be holding them back? See, patterns can be both positive and negative, and understanding the difference or understanding the significance is essential for your development. When you get it for you, you then get to be this wealth of information and experience in interrupting those patterns for the people on your team as well, because they're adopting your patterns. They're adopting or assimilating themselves, right? They're aligning and molding themselves to your patterns. So if you've discovered that there's a pattern of behavior that you want to interrupt, just know this: your opportunity with your team is to expose it to them as well. It's so important that you hear that. So let's talk a little bit about the significance of patterns, because I think that's important before we get into the so if not this, then what, right? You've heard me say that before. If not this, then what, right? Well, patterns have significance. Patterns shape our thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and outcomes. Positive patterns contribute to well-being, productivity, and success, but negative patterns can hinder us, right? They can hold us back. They can limit our well-being, right? So that's clear. What happens when you see that you have an ingrained negative pattern, right? What do? Well, negative patterns emerge from repeated thoughts. Our thought life is so key and instrumental in our patterns of behavior, our actions, and our experiences. Our thought life, when we think it, it creates a picture, right? Words, pictures, emotions. We think it, we're speaking it to ourselves. It's creating a picture in our mind, right? And immediately we're attaching an emotion to that thought that we had, those words that we spoke. That behavior pattern is where we want to, it actually influences our self talk, negative or positive. And so if you find yourself having negative outcomes or negative self talk, or people around you have said, wow, you're really just kind of negative, friend, like what's going on in your life? It's a really great opportunity for you to just go, ooh, I need a pattern interrupt. I don't want to be seen that way. So how do I do that? How do I begin the stop? See, the need for a pattern interrupt, I should say that, challenge us, right? They challenge us at the belief level, and then the behaviors follow. They challenge us at the belief level and the behaviors follow. So then when we identify that there's something not working in that, right? We want to actually, we've identified that limiting belief that's unproductive, right? For us, we now want to be challenged to go, okay, so if that's the belief that's unproductive, and what's the behavior I've associated now with that or adopted for that, and how do I change that? See, the need for a pattern interrupt provides us with an opportunity that's so key to breaking free from self-imposed limitations. I mean, that's just it. When we can identify that we've got a pattern, we actually are now identifying the self-imposed limitations that we can break free from so that we can be our best, highest self in every circumstance. And I want to say it this way, leader. You have patterns of behavior that got you to the level that you are. Whatever that level is, you have a pattern of behavior that got you there. And my question for you is, that the level of behavior that is actually going to serve you moving forward? You got here, it took you this far, but is it what you need to continue going? Or are you really just comfortable where you're at? But then you ask and look around you and go, okay, these are the patterns and the behaviors that got me here. I'm not seeing anything that I need to interrupt, but is everything so ingrained in me, and I'm just working at this even keel status quo level, and I've created others around me which to operate in that same way, which maybe their behaviors need interrupting so they're more innovative and creative to take you further. Maybe you've gotten here, but your team's going to take you to here. How do you do that? Look at the patterns of behavior that we might want to disrupt and interrupt and get in alignment, right? Unlock those new possibilities. Pattern interrupts open doors to fresh perspectives. Pattern interrupts open doors to innovative solutions. They allow for the adoption, right, of growth oriented thinking, growth oriented mindsets, because we get comfortable with change. We get comfortable with disrupting the status quo or the norm, and we're interrupting those patterns. So those patterns of, I'm going to give you this example, friend. I actually was with a client a while ago. It doesn't matter how long ago. I was with a client, and we were talking about people on the team and their challenge with some of the most simplistic things, being on time to work. And the leader was like, I don't understand why this is so difficult. Well, their pattern of behavior, the leader's pattern of behavior, one, they were not as consistent with showing up on time as well. So people were modeling that on the team. But the pattern of behavior that we identified to interrupt was the approach that the leader was taking with the team members. Instead of just being frustrated, and my pattern of behavior is, well, they're just always going to be late and I'm frustrated about that, and it'll go on their annual review. We actually had to do a pattern interrupt to say, no, stop that. What, if not this, if I don't want this, what do I want? What's the behavior I'm modeling that's creating this? And they actually were able to identify, they didn't have the bold upfront conversation with the team about the value for them, what their value is with being on time and why that's important to them individually. Forget the work environment for a minute. Let's take it to the personal value. Once that was explained to the team, all of a sudden, the team members there was a couple of them that had the most challenge, they shifted their behavior because we showed them what a pattern interrupt would look like. We gave them the context as to why it was of value and important to interrupt that pattern of behavior, and helped them to identify the how they interrupt that pattern of behavior. And that leader became more efficient in the way they communicated with their team, and their team was actually able to understand why that was important and to begin with. Now, that might just be a really sophomoric type example for you because maybe that's not the issue for you. No matter the size of the issue, if there is a pattern of behavior that's consistently in the way and we want to change that, then it's up to us to make those changes in ourselves and identify what those patterns are in others, draw the line to say, stop that. This is what we're going to do. If not this, then this. I don't want this. This is what I do want. And here's how we're going to get there. So, unlocking new possibilities for ourselves with those pattern interrupts enables a reframing of beliefs, an adopting of new behaviors, and cultivating positive patterns, which those positive patterns create the innovation that you're looking for and that might just be missing in your team. So, what are the benefits of a pattern interrupt? Well, transformation and personal growth to begin with, right? Increased resiliency and adaptability for you as well as your team. Because when your team understands that you are passionate about and you are committed to, as a leader, identifying those things that have kept us holding out or have kept us at status quo, right? The just get by, right? The I'm just coasting until such a time something happens, right? Those behaviors, right? That we want to disrupt because we want people to be more adaptable and get comfortable with change. I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Change is not a matter of if, it's when, and it's how we approach it that matters most. And getting familiar with personal or with pattern interrupts helps us to be adaptable and amenable and agile with change. So important. Benefits of pattern interrupt are also about unlocking creativity and innovation, overcoming those self-imposed limitations or limiting beliefs, and reaching our full potential as leaders. So let's talk about what holds us back on those common patterns and behaviors that hold us back as leaders. Well, the first one is a fixed mindset, right? A fixed mindset where leaders believe that their abilities and intelligence are fixed traits, and that can hinder our growth, our development, and that of your team. And it limits the willingness to take risk. If you are someone that likes to play it safe all the time, you have a pattern of behavior and you have a fixed mindset. When you're playing it safe all the time, you're just comfortable in the safety zone. You have a fixed mindset. You might want to take a look at that. Negative self-talk. When you paint the same scenario with the same color paintbrush because they never, and I'm hard on myself, and you ruminate on the things that didn't work out, right? You're dwelling on past failures, right? You can, that both of the negative self-talk and the dwelling on past behaviors, or past failures, really can keep us hesitating to make decisions, right? Struggling to build build others up or motivate the team because you're doubting yourself and you're doubting your skills and abilities and doubting whether people actually follow through and listen to you, right? Those are patterns of behavior there are patterns of behavior that got you there, that you want to say, again, draw the line, stop that, step over the line and start something new, because otherwise you're going to create stagnation, right? There's going to be lack of growth in your team and yourself. There's going to be missed opportunities and unfortunately decreased team morale. I mean, those are all outcomes of what happens when you as the leader have bad patterns, and I'll say bad, have patterns of behavior that no longer serve or are not serving the growth of the team. You know, team leaders run into this in middle management a lot, where they can see there's a leader above them that has a pattern of behavior that could be destructive, right? Could be very destructive. And middle managers aren't sure, often feel that they have the strength and the wherewithal to be able to step in and interrupt a pattern that a leader above them has. I want to encourage you today, if that's you, because you've seen some of these negative behaviors or these limiting beliefs and the fixed mindset that a leader above you has, my invitation for you is to be bold and ask for a conversation. Don't do it on the end of a big meeting or right before a big meeting. Like, be intentional about, could I share a 15-minute conversation with you, leader? And be bold to just say, I've noticed a behavior that might be getting in the way, and tell them what that is. But then ask how you can support them. They may not see it right away, and that's okay. But for you to come forward and say, look, I'm a friend to your destiny. I am here to help you navigate to that next level of leadership. That's going to help your leader above you see the value in you, that you recognize the cracks in the sidewalk that they might have been stepping over, and you're here to help. Instead of you being the one that dwells on everything and that's frustrated about it and doesn't do anything, be the one that has the voice for change and help people interrupt right? Demonstrate how to interrupt a pattern. Use a personal example about interrupting a pattern, right? And then the biggest one I can tell you, that probably one of the biggest ones, is negative self-talk. You can stand and listen to people. Folks that have worked with me will tell you all the time, please don't start what you're going to say to me with an apology. Sorry, I probably shouldn't bring this up. Oh, I know you've probably told me this before, and I really, sorry, I'm going to waste time again. When they do that, that tells me that person is driven by negative self-talk, because they don't see themselves in successful situations for successful outcomes, but they more importantly don't see that their voice matters, because they're apologizing before they make a request or before they give insight, and they think that it's just not that good. So what I'm encouraging you to do, should you hear that within your team, tell them to stop that. Please stop, right? You can use the start, stop, and continue model. You can say, I want you to start every sentence with your request. I want you to stop starting every sentence with an apology. I want you to continue bringing your ideas to me, right? That's how a start, stop, and continue works with that, to interrupt a pattern. The start, stop, and continue model is a fantastic model for interrupting a behavior pattern like negative self-talk. It's important, though, that you hear for it, you listen for it, and you put people on notice. I'm listening for negative self-talk. I want all of us to be listening for negative self-talk in the team, because that's a pattern of behavior that's probably that is one of the biggest deterrents to our success. Let me say that again. Negative self-talk in a person or in a team is one of the biggest deterrents for our team collective success, because it limits us, it holds us back, and it locks our thinking on, and it creates a picture of why this will never work. How come we're always broken? How come everybody's always not getting along? How come this fails? And we get into this ruminating dwell and this spin. And the pattern interrupt is the stop that, draw the line. If not this, then what? We don't want this. What do we want? And how are we going to go about getting it? And what's our commitment to that? And that we all get on the same page with that. And we model for each other what that looks like. Because when you have a fixed mindset and you believe that, you've reached your abilities, right? Your peak of your abilities, right? You resist feedback when you push away, and you resist others from sharing their own professional insights on you, how what they see in you. Unfortunately, you do plateau because you're limiting yourself. And the best thing that we can do for someone like you is come alongside to say, no, here's what I see. And it's okay that you're pushing back, but here's my assignment for you. When someone pushes back and says, no, I'm just, and they're dwelling on the negative, they don't see themselves the way you're telling them you see them, and you're trying to interrupt a pattern of behavior. You can actually give them the task of, I want you to write down at the end of every day, what are 5 positive things you did this day, and bring and email it to me, and do that for a series of weeks. Every day you want a 5 o'clock email that says, here are the 5 things that I did today, 5 at 5, right? I want 5 things that positive that you did today, outcomes that you produced today. That starts to shift that negative person who's that fixed mindset, starts to shift them into the good that they did, then opens them up for what else they can do. If they did that, wow, that's great. It starts to shift their perspective. So these are just some of the highlights on pattern interrupt. And again, like I said, I think one of the biggest opportunities for us is to really look at, how are we talking to ourselves? What's the conversation? Would you have the conversation with your child that you have with you about you? Would you, when you think about how you talk about yourself in your role at work, is that a conversation that you would want recorded on a podcast to be shared? Is that a conversation that you would want the board of directors over your organization to hear? Because you were put into a position, you were raised up into a position because of the opportunities that you presented and the possibilities that you presented. And you're there, and you might have a bit of imposter syndrome going on. That's fair. But what's the pattern of behavior that's impacting that imposter syndrome? You could be a business owner, right? That you could be a business owner. I know we've got business owners that listen to this podcast faithfully. And I get feedback from them, thanking them because they're getting tools on how to work with their team. Well, this one business owner or leader is for you. What's the pattern of behavior that you have that could be holding you back? And what do you want to do about it? And I invite you, reach out to me. You can absolutely reach out through the website. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can message me in whatever way is easiest for you on social media or through the website, and let me know what you're committing to. But also, if you have a question on a pattern of behavior that you want help with, put that in there. I will send you a personal message, friend, when you let me know, here's the pattern of behavior and I can't see a way to break it. I know it's not serving me. How do I interrupt it? I promise you, I will come back and I will give you I will absolutely give you the tips and tools on how to do that if you didn't get it from today's episode. I want you to head on over to tammyjbond.com/podcast and click on this episode, because I've got a step-by-step process for breaking your pattern of behavior and creating your own pattern interrupt. Because listen, when we can see those negative patterns and behaviors that impact us as leaders, our effectiveness, our communication, and how they hinder our team's performance, our team's attitudes, our team's belief about themselves, about their ability to succeed with me as a leader or with you as a leader. When we can take a look at that and we take the time to separate ourselves out and look at that, and then identify what we can change, because every bit of change is within, I believe you are whole, capable, creative, and resourceful to get after your change. When we can do that, it increases that effectiveness. It opens up our teams to possibility. It unlocks our potential. It fosters growth. And then we get to seize those opportunities for success. And it's simply put, we can help our team grow and ourselves grow by looking at the patterns of behavior that no longer serve us and that will not take us forward to achieve that goal that we have. Identify it, name it, claim it, own it, and put your fix in place by interrupting a pattern of behavior. If not this, then what? Stop that. That's what I say to myself. When I can hear myself, there's times where I get into my own negative dwelling for a moment about something, or I'll over process something. Stop that, Tammy. You're better than that. It's just like you to move past this and move through this quickly and grow from the learning opportunity. Take the, eat the meat, spit out the bones. And for, I have a specific friend that hates that expression when I say that. You're welcome, friend. Just for you today. I want you to leave behind what doesn't serve you and step into what does. And here's the one last and final key on pattern interrupt I want to tell you. When we're interrupting behavior patterns or our self-talk around our thoughts, our limiting beliefs, our fixed mindset, those things that we're locked onto that are holding us back, one of the greatest tools that you can insert is accountability partner. Whether you hire a coach, whether you have somebody on your team, right? It's usually best not a spouse. Let me be real. It's usually best not as a spouse. Because that creates other challenges. Somebody from the outside looking in, fresh perspective that can help you to change and shift those patterns of behavior that you've identified that are no longer serving you is a really great tool to implement. And I would encourage you, get a mentor, get a coach, find an accountability partner, one of the three of them, to help you with identifying those patterns for yourself and the fix to shift so that you adopt new behaviors, a new mindset, new beliefs that propels you forward. All right. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. I'm excited for you to have these key tools. Now, make sure on your notes, I told you to write down your 1, 2, and 3. Now I want you to go back and write down 1, 2, and 3 again on your notes. And I want for you to put in what are the 3 action items that you're going to implement as a result of today's conversation around pattern interrupt, interrupting those patterns that no longer serve you. What are you committing to, friend? Because if it's meant to be on this one, it is up to you to identify and implement your own pattern interrupt. And it might be asking for help, right? We're just going to use the power of the ask and go ask for help for somebody else to come in from the outside, fresh perspective to help us identify. And then we get to put the fix in place with somebody else alongside of us. Link arm in arm, partner up, make it happen, because you are too valuable to be held back by limiting beliefs and a fixed mindset and patterns of behavior that no longer serve you. Make it a great day. Well, thank you so much for joining me in the Sandbox today. My hope is that you're leaving with new tools, tips, and strategies to navigate your personal leadership, your team leadership, and your next pattern interrupt. And hey, it would mean so much to me if you would share the content and share the tools, the episode today with a friend or a colleague that you actually think could benefit from what you've learned here in the Sandbox. Third-party affirmations go so far in today's world economy, and it would mean a lot if you just took a moment to share the value that you gained from spending time in the sandbox today. And don't forget to head on over to tammyjbond.com/podcast to get your copy of the After Action Plan. It is filled with great tips, tools, and strategies for you to use to implement your own pattern interrupt today. Now, remember, friend, leadership is not something that you are born with. It's something that you grow into. So thank you for taking the time to grow into your next level of leadership in the sandbox today. Make it a great day.